Hi everyone. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Maybe a thumbs up before we formally or finally start our webinar session for today. All right. Okay. So hi again everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are right now, because I know that this webinar is being attended by teachers worldwide. Probably you can shout out where you are right now. I see that we have participants from Argentina, from Mexico. Buenos dias, buenas noches. That right? It's buenas noches because it's already nighttime there. We have participants from the Philippines also, from Malaysia, from Qatar. Wow. Welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar series, the Neo-Lms Webinar series. I am Jen Padernal. I'm the Director for E-Learning Integration of Cypher Learning, and I will be your webinar host and speaker for today. I am also a teacher. I teach in a university here in the Philippines. So all of us here are educators or all teachers. So this webinar series is brought to us by Cypher Learning in celebration of the International Teachers Month or Teachers Day, which happened last October 5. So happy World Teachers Month, everyone. This webinar series is also in recognition of all of our teachers' continuous effort to bring education in every classroom. Well, at this time, probably in every home, because most, if not all of us, are actually teaching from home. Our students are learning from home, and as teachers, we continue to teach, we continue to share our knowledge, share our time to our students. And with that, we would like to thank you, and we would want to kind of like dedicate this webinar to all of us, to all of the teachers worldwide. So as teachers have really done a lot of things already for our students, no matter what the situation is. We're always there. Teachers have always been true to their mission of getting our students to be ready for the future. We keep doing our best, to bring education anytime, anywhere, so that our students can continue learning no matter how tough the time is, no matter how the time has changed. Our mission, we keep doing it. We keep our promise to our learners that we will continue helping them so that they are ready for the future, so that they continue to develop their future ready skills, of course, no matter what situation we are in. Okay. The tough times has always been there. Teaching has changed, the situation has changed, the way that we're teaching, the way that we're learning. Somehow we're seeing a whole new different thing. But this is not all bad. This is kind of like a learning experience for everyone, something new that we can learn, and something new that we can all have a fun experience with. So our mission, as I mentioned, stays the same. We make sure that our students keep learning and are prepared for the future, and we remain true to that mission. We also keep looking for ways by which we can help our students catch up and move up into our lessons. Despite that we are not in a physical classroom, we keep recognizing that our students are unique. Each student is unique. They learn differently. They create differently. We always recognize the uniqueness of our students. Therefore, we also continue to create lessons that are appropriate, activities that are appropriate to our students and in their different learning capabilities, learning styles, and their different ways of being creative in our classroom. We do this because we want to make sure that no child is left behind. Though things have changed, though we're teaching in a different, probably different way, uh, we always want to make sure that all our students are able to catch up and move up into our lessons, that no child is left behind. That's why we love teachers. So happy World Teachers Day. And what we always do as teachers, because we recognize the uniqueness in our students. We always want to give our learners personalized learning space and courses, and we always try to prepare our lessons based on their individual strengths, weaknesses, goals, and learning behavior. So we always try to prepare courses that can adapt real time to our learners' activities and to their different learning styles. So in this webinar, this is what we want to share with you. We want to share with you the core principles of adaptive learning, how you can implement adaptive learning in your classroom, how we can build an online class in Neo-Lms. I know that most of our attendees today are actually using Neo-Lms already in their classroom or in their school, and how we can deliver a personalized learning experience for our students. For us to be able to do that, of course, we kind of like embrace this methodology that's called adaptive learning, otherwise known as adaptive teaching. So adaptive learning or adaptive teaching is a technology or technology aided or computed algorithm aided method of teaching. It could be AI that allows us teachers to tailor fit our teaching styles and content to the learning needs of the learners or the students without having to do it manually. Probably some of you or most of you are already doing this, but to some who's new into adaptive learning, this is today is the best time for us to share with each other what adaptive learning is and how we can do this in our own classroom. So aside from what is being said here in the definition of adaptive learning, I have kind of like my own way of understanding what adaptive learning is. I call it the if then else learning. So this is not something that has to do with coding to those who are teaching computers or programming, but I call it the if then else type of learning. That's how I see adaptive learning. So if it's kind of like if the students gets this, then he or she moves forward to the next lesson. Otherwise, I give the students a different activity. So it's really like setting some parameters and conditions so that our lessons and activities adapts to the way that the students are learning and to their learning needs. It's also kind of like if you're familiar with the board game called Snake and Ladder, where or any board game where you throw the dice, it's either you move forward or you go back to some of the points or some of the areas when you throw the dice so that you can start all over again or take a different path. So that's how I see what adaptive learning is. It's kind of like the if then else of learning. If my students performs this way, then my student moves forward. Otherwise, I give a different activity so my students can catch up and move up to the next lesson. So it's kind of like students move from one activity to another based on their progress on the previous activity. So that's how I see what adaptive learning is in a very simple way of understanding it. Now, how do we get started with adaptive learning? Some of you might be wondering, or some of you might have already been doing adaptive learning, but please feel free to share the way that you're also practicing adaptive learning. The reason also why we're here is because we wanted to share with each other our best practices in adaptive learning. So how do I do this? I'll share with you my personal experience in adaptive learning. I have three keywords that that I use to prepare an adaptive lesson and adaptive activities for my students. And this is something that I also wanted to share with everyone. So these three keywords that get me started with adaptive learning, I have CBT. I have that. I love acronyms, so I call this the CBT: content, blueprint, and technology. These are the three keywords that I always use to remind me, or at least a process that I use so that I can get started with preparing my lessons and activities to be adaptive to what my learners or to what my student needs. So again, it's content, blueprint, and technology. So how do I do this? How do I use that? So first off is I have to think of the content that I'm going to deliver, the content of my class, the content of my course, the content of my lesson. We need to adapt the content, and probably asking these questions will help us in preparing the content or determining the content that we need for adaptive learning. So please, first, no, you can actually ask what stimulates students' learning. Is it gonna be like video based? Are my students fond of watching videos? Do I need images to stimulate learning? Do I need text, audio, or do I need everything? And if I need everything, probably the next question you would ask would be, will I be able to put all of those elements, the videos, the images, the text, the audio, into one lesson? How would I do that? Okay. So later on, you'll find out how. We are, we also ask ourselves, how are we going to deliver the content that we have, the instructional delivery? Is it going to be synchronous? Is it going to be synchronous? Is it going to be hybrid? So how is this going to be? So these are the things that we need to ask and consider while we prepare our content that we will be providing to our students, or that we will have our students, that we will give students access to. And speaking of access, the next question would probably be, in terms of content or creating adaptive content, how is the access going to be? Is this going to be they access at their own pacing? Or is it going to be something like there's a preset time when they can access a lesson? Is it going to be like a drip type of access, wherein each lesson, when placed into a learning management system or a digital platform, opens at a certain days, kind of like a drip content that's opening on X number of days that we have set? Is it going to be accessed in order or in any order? Is it going to be sequential? So these are the questions that will help us as we prepare and as we gather our lessons that we are going to provide to our students. We have to remember that our students would, like what I've mentioned earlier, they have different way, unique way of learning, unique way of understanding each lesson, and we need to cater to those different ways that the students are understanding the lessons that we are delivering. So the question still remain, what stimulates students' learning? We have to think of those things. Video, text, audio, are we going to be needing all of them, or can we just, probably use all of them so that our students, or we cater to all of the students' needs, right? And then these lessons can also be placed or presented in different formats, but you can place this in one digital platform, so that everyone gets to have access to this lesson in many different ways. I know that we're all familiar with the different learning styles of the students. Sometimes when we, during the time that we are still in the classroom, and probably when we go back, you probably notice that when a teacher is like me, who loves to talk, the students who are benefiting in my lessons are the students who are auditory, because I love to talk and the students loves to listen. So sometimes I have a PowerPoint presentation for those visual learner, but sometimes I tend to forget to click on the next slide. So I just keep talking and talking. So the students who are auditory are the one benefiting, and the visual students are probably wondering, so my teacher's saying a different thing and I'm seeing a different thing in her PowerPoint. It's because sometimes I forget to click next. So sometimes I would end up looking at the PowerPoint presentation and would say, oh, I'm still in my first slide, but I'm already discussing towards the end of the lesson. So sometimes it's a kind of a challenge to do this when you are inside a physical classroom. But later on, I'll share with you how we can make this easily, how we can do this easily. So that's the first one, content. The second one is, after gathering and preparing all of the contents that we are going to share with our students, you would want to create a blueprint of that content, just to make sure um, that we are kind of like preparing or laying out how the students are going to be accessing our lesson. It helps in adaptive learning. It helps that we prepare all of the scenario. And the way that I prepare my scenario is that I love creating a diagram on uh, how I visualize the movement and conditions that I want to set when my students are already accessing the lessons and activity. So this one helps. This is just an example, but of course you can create your own blueprint of how you want the students to be moving forward to each activity and to each lesson. So for example, here, I have a quiz. I prepare a quiz or an activity that's meant for all students. And based on the progress that they make on that particular quiz, the example of a condition would be if a student gets above 50% of scores in that quiz, they can go to the next lesson, finish that next lesson and take the quiz, take another quiz, and then another condition is set when they get another 50% on that second quiz, they can move forward to the next part of the lesson. So it's like a ladder. There's a hierarchy to that. And the other condition would be if the student gets less than 50% on that particular activity, they can do the following. It's either they watch a video, they do a practice quiz. Of course, the conditions and the stage where they will move depends on how we see it working for them. So that's why I believe that it's important that we lay out all of those conditions and the way that we see that the students will be moving into each of the lesson and each of the activities that we have. So we also have to think of those conditions. What are the conditions wherein when the students can move from one activity to another or from one content to another? It doesn't always have to be the activity. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned the if, then else type of learning, no, kind of like match that or compare that to adaptive learning. This is actually the if then else. If the student gets 50% and above, they go to the next lesson. If the students gets less than 50% in the quiz, then they do go to the next part or do they move to a different lesson or watch a video or do a practice quiz. So this is how I represent or present the if then else type of learning. So this is blueprinting. This is very important. Prepare the lesson again. Let me just go back to that a little bit. Prepare all your lessons and then create the blueprint on how you see, how you visualize the students moving from one lesson or one activity to another based on certain conditions. So this is helping them. This is helping them uh, move forward and catch up to the lessons, because we all recognize that there are students who can catch up very quickly, very fast to our lessons. And there are students who needs more time. And when the student needs more time, we also need to create. This is kind of like the differentiated instruction. Okay, so we prepare different types of lesson in an easy way, because probably now that I've shown you this, you're probably thinking, okay, so Jen, how do I do that? I get to prepare different types of activities, different type of lessons for my students who are learning differently. How do I do that? Wouldn't that going to be very tedious for me? Or if you don't want to create a diagram, by the way, if you don't want to create a diagram, if the diagram is not for you, you can always also use a table, okay, over here. Okay, you can use a table to map those conditions with the activity and with the technology enabler that you have. And speaking of technology enabler, this is also to answer the question probably that you have in mind. If you are going to create different lessons, different activities for the different needs of the students, you're probably thinking, this is going to be very tedious for me as a teacher. How am I going to do that? I only have two hands and I only have this time, enough time to prepare for at least one type of instruction. So that's when the technology comes in. So remember, from the CBT, we have content, we have the blueprint, and we have the technology to help us. So the first process, again, is to prepare the content. Then we lay out the content. We create a blueprint of the content and the activity so that we would know, or we have a vision of how the students are moving or going to move from one activity to another depending on their progress to the previous activity. And for us to be able to do that quite easily, we need a technology enabler. So we need a digital platform that can help us do that. And there are kind of like a lot of digital platforms available to help us create an adaptive learning experience, much more personalized learning experience for our students. But we have to be very careful in evaluating the tool that we are going to use. There are many tools that's available saying that they cater to adaptive learning, but we have to make sure that really those digital tools, it very well supports adaptive learning. And some of the questions that you would want to ask when choosing a digital platform would be this. First is uh, the data. What useful data can the platform or your technology enabler provide in terms of students' progress and how they respond to each lesson and activities? Will they be giving us enough data, enough analytics, just so we could see how our students are really progressing? And this data would help us develop an early intervention for our students, or even set different conditions based on what the technology enabler is providing us. Does it allow us to design content with numerous options for structuring, probably creating paths and access options to students? Another question would be, what is the degree of adaptability and capability of positively enforcing that learning? Is it going to be, is the digital platform that we are thinking to use going to be able to help us do that? Well, does it offer feature that allows different feedback mechanism? Because feedback is very important for our students. Or another question could be, does it have a well-designed AI system that has the ability to perceive student interaction or progress and execute automated actions and conditions? So these are some of the questions that you might want to look at when you're choosing a digital platform that will help you prepare personalized and adaptive learning experience for our students. We don't have to do this manually. As mentioned earlier, adaptive learning is a methodology that is aided by computer technology aided, algorithm aided, that helps us perceive students' interaction, their progress automatically, and then we can set conditions automatically also on what we want the system to do when they detect certain conditions that we have set. And this is also, I hope that you're seeing uh, the relationship now between the content, the blueprinting, and the technology. So the technology will help us make that blueprint come to life. The technology will help us execute the blueprint that we have. But before we can make the blueprint or layout or conditions or the structure of access of learners to activities and lessons, we need to identify the content. So it's either CBT or TBC. Okay, so this is kind of like a process that I always apply when I want to create an adaptive learning experience for my students. And the technology that helps me do that is a learning management system. A learning management system allows me to create and deliver content that can easily be accessed by my students. And it also allows me to monitor the students' progress, their engagement, their participation, track their performance, and assess their knowledge, and create automated action that will make my blueprint come to life, where I can apply what's in my blueprint. So that is why it's very important for us to choose very, very carefully the type of technology that we're going to use when we want to do adaptive learning. So the LMS that I'm using, of course, is Neo-Lms. Neo-Lms is a learning management system that strongly supports adaptive learning. Later on, I'll have a live demonstration on how it is used and how we can configure adaptive learning in Neo. So Neo allows teachers to create, manage, automate all of the learning activities, whether it's building online class or whether we're doing a brick and mortar class. So it also helps us enhance collaboration and track progress and achievements of our students. So this platform, and I know that most of you or all of us here, most if not all of us here are using Neo LMS, and you're very familiar with this. We know that Neo can help us easily create classes that are engaging. And the way that it supports adaptive learning, there's also different uh, styles of teaching that can be supported by Neo. It could be instructor-led, it could be self-paced, it could be blended, it could be micro classes. We are allowed also, the platform also allows us to create learning path for our students. We have, it has a feature that allows synchronization of content. So if we are teaching multiple sections, same classes, we don't have to do the same or repeat the same task of creating the same lesson or same activities or same configuration for different group of students if we are teaching one subject, multiple sections or multiple groups. In terms of learning, of course, we have to make sure that the platform is very intuitive, that it is designed to give the students a very delightful learning experience, that it will allow our learners to have access to class content anytime, anywhere, and in different structures that we have prepared for them, that it also caters to different types of learning. Remember, I mentioned what stimulates students' learning. Can that, um, can your platform host video? Can we add videos, text, images, and audio to the platform? Of course, we know that the platform that we're using is allowing us to do that. And that's also catering to the different learning preference of our students. So, and not only that the teachers are able to track learning progress of the learner, but also the learners using Neo-Lms or this learning management system, it also allows them to track individually their own progress, because that's very important. The students should also see how they're progressing in the course, and it will help them understand why probably they're moving in a different direction as compared to their classmates. So that's one way, and that will help them also probably talk to you or consult with you on how they can move up and catch up faster also. And then, of course, we want to keep our students more engaged, so we have to make sure that the platform that we're using is also very engaging. Okay, and speaking of different activities, of course, it's important that our learning management system caters to different types of activities that we want to do as teachers, or that we want to provide our students, or we want to give our students. So Neo-LMS has 14 different types of assessments. It also has a grade book. It has a rubric. We can create question banks, different type of question banks. Even if we're teaching the same lesson, we can give different, we can create different types of questions. So we can also have a question with different level of difficulties. So these are just some of the features that Neo has. And also, of course, an important way to track our students' progress is by using the mastery and competency feature of Neo-LMS. So Neo-LMS also support competency-based learning, which is also very important in adaptive learning. So we can align lessons and assignments with the different standards and competency, and we can track and view how our students are progressing in our classes based on the standards and competencies that we have set. And the best part is, we, because of this analytics that the competency and mastery and competency feature of Neo-LMS that's giving us, we are now able to create an early intervention for our students based on the analytics that it's providing us. And we don't need to do that manually, because there are a lot of automation rules and actions that Neo can give us, or that Neo is providing us. So we can add rules and actions with a point and click interface and execute one or more actions when a rule is triggered. That's one of the many best features that we have in Neo. That's also helping me as a teacher develop an early intervention, automated actions on what I want the system to do if the system detects certain conditions that I have set based on how my students are progressing and learning in my lessons. And all of those are happening because we have an analytics that's helping us do that. Okay, so those are some of the many things, that uh, the platform is giving us. Remember earlier, I mentioned that's important when we are evaluating the technology to be used in adaptive learning. Data is very important. So we have to make sure that the system that we're using has an analytics or data enough to give us insights on how our students are learning and how our students are progressing in the lesson so that we can also develop early intervention for our students so that we are able to help them catch up and move up. That's very, very important. The platform must be intelligent enough to give us all that we need, to give us all of the information that we need so that we are able to help our students. Now, having mentioned all of those, you're probably wondering, so how do we do that in Neo? How does adaptive learning works in Neo LMS? Most of us here, if not all, are using Neo LMS. So I will show you. I'll stop sharing the screen and I will show you another screen. Okay, let me just share my screen here. And let me show you how adaptive learning or how we can use Neo or Neo's adaptive learning feature. Okay, let me just share another screen with you here. So let me show you an example of that. Okay, so I've logged in to a Neo instance. So this is Neo LMS. Probably later I can show you my own class, but for the purpose of this webinar, because I have live classes going on right now, so I don't want to use that, and my students will be wondering what's going on in our class. So please allow me to use this demo instance to show you what are the features inside Neo that you can use for adaptive learning. Of course, the first step is that your LMS administrator must enable the adaptive learning feature of Neo-Lms. So they just have to go to the Neo-Lms App Center and enable adaptive learning. After it's configured, of course, the first thing that we need to do as teachers is to create our subject, to create our class. Once the class is created, remember the first step, letter C in CBT, our content, okay? Identify all of the content that's needed to be placed in the LMS. We lay out our content. Okay, we put it here, we organize it here. So we have lessons, we have the topics within our lessons. Once everything is already in place in Neo, then we execute the blueprint that we have. In the blueprint, we see all of the conditions that we have set. What are those conditions? The if, then, else. So the if, then, else applies both to lessons and activities. So for example, in managing the lessons, you have different ways by which you can manage the lesson. You're seeing here, I have a date here, so you can actually have a date when the lessons are going to be open or when the lessons will be open for the students. And the way that you could do that is to create the lesson, and then you go to the calendar part of the lesson and set the date when you want the students to be able to access this lesson. It could be based on a certain date, or another way could probably be based on the number of days. That's called the drip content. So we have the drip content that's also found here. So you have to go to admin, go to lessons, and then enable drip content here. So what does drip content do? So the drip content allows you to create a preset day when the lessons or the modules will open for your students. So you can also do this. So it's either by date or by day. X number of days before the next lessons will, or the next lesson or next module will open. Or another way is to lock and unlock your lessons or to hide and show lessons. So for example, over here, I'll go back to my lessons or modules. I'll open one lesson and then okay, let's wait for that. All right, over here, you see this shown tab. You can actually click on this and choose either to hide or show this lesson and add filter to that. You can add filter so that this item is shown to selected users and hidden to selected users. So you can, what other teachers are doing, they only open the first lesson. The succeeding lessons, they are hidden, and then they add a completion action over here. Completion action, okay? They add a completion action, and the completion action could either be showing the next lesson or hiding the next lesson. So these are part of the adaptive learning feature that we have. So if you click show lessons, so the system will show you all of the lessons that has been hidden, and you can choose which lesson will open depending on the progress that the student made in the previous lesson. So this is in terms of managing your content and managing your lesson. Now, in terms of activities, we also have the same. Or before I move to that, I just wanted to show you that there's also a completion requirements here. So what does this completion requirement? It says here that this lesson is considered completed when all of the sections, okay, are completed. So what are those sections? The sections are this. These are the sections in your lesson. So you can add, okay, some completion requirements here. How many number of sections must a learner complete so that they can move to the next lesson? So this is another way of managing completion action. Oops, sorry about that. Let me share that again. There. Okay. Another feature that you can use, okay, is when you go to the admin and go to completion. In terms of managing the lesson, you can activate here the sequencing. Require lessons to be completed in order and require sections to be completed in order. Again, these features that I'm showing you, it really depends on what you need, and it really depends on how you think it's going to help your students. So that's the reason why blueprinting or mapping the lessons, activities, and the movement of the students based on certain condition is very important. But all of these features that I'm showing you are actually the features that you can use to manage the way that help the students manage the way that they are learning. And it doesn't only apply to the lesson. We also have the same for assignments. So for each assignment or activity that you create, you can also set the same condition, right? We have completion action. You can also add a minimum score requirement before a student can move forward, or before the system applies the completion action that you've chosen. So you can choose to hide an assignment, hide an assignment, show an assignment, lock a lesson. It really depends on what conditions you think is going to help your students or our students for that matter. You can assign different score rules. Okay, so the score rules, I love score rules in assignments because I can add multiple score rules. So we love doing this. So this is an example. If, remember the if then else, if the student gets greater than or equal to X number of points or percentage, say for example 90%, I will click save. When I click save, I can add a triggered action. So the action could be either I open a hidden lesson for that student, I open an assignment to for that student who gets a 90% up grade, or award them a badge, award them points, award them certificate, or add them to a group, enroll them into class. So all of these are automated action that can help us, okay, with the blueprint that we have laid out, okay? Kind of like the action that we want the system to do when a student satisfies a certain condition, or you can even send them a custom notification. Congratulations for getting 90% in this quiz. Now, if you want another condition, because there are times when the condition or the score rules would be like, what if my student gets a score of between 70 to 80? How do I do that? Okay, so all you need to do again is to add rule, select greater than 70 or greater than or equal to X percent, and then add another action that is less than or equal to, so the in between. So could be greater than, say, 60, but less than 80. So it's between 60 to 79. Could be that. So you can have the same condition or rules. And then, so you see here, greater than 60, but less than or equal to 80%. So it's between 60 and 80. So you can add an action. What you want the system to do when the student satisfies this condition. So this is in terms of activities. You can do something like this in Neo. You can also, aside from the score rule, we have shown and hidden, hide this activity to some student and show this activity to some students. So it really depends on what rules and conditions you want to set. So those are the things that you can do in terms of activities, okay? Mapping your activities and setting conditions for activities for your students. Okay. Aside from that, I mentioned mastery and competency. So once you've set the standards, the mastery and competencies for your students or the school standards, in this case, this is called learning outcomes. You can change the terminology of the platform. If you're using learning outcomes in your school, you use learning outcomes. You can use mastery and competency. So based on mastery and competency, you can also set some rules. If, for example, and this is an example of that, rules here. So you can set rules based on competencies. Just click add rule, top right portion of the screen over here of the page. So select the triggered competency. Okay, so for example, over here, the triggered competency is this one. And if the student gets a rating of greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, it really depends on what you want to use over here as a condition. Okay, so they get less, greater than or equal to 80. You save this, and then you have, again, triggered action that you can set on what you want the system to do once they detect the conditions that you have set. So all of these are available and we can use in a learning management system in Neo-Lms to support adaptive learning. These are just some of the many automation rules that I'm actually also using in my own class. So this will help us. Remember, again, I keep repeating this process because this is going to be very helpful for us. You manage the content inside the learning management system, put the content there, the blueprint that you have created, the if then else condition and when the students will move or will go back to a specific lesson, you can trigger them and configure them in Neo-LMS using the Neo-LMS automation rules. So that's how you can use the platform and bring into life the blueprint that you have so that we are able to help our students catch up and move up to our lesson. And this is also helping us teachers create an adaptive and much more personalized learning experience for our students. Now, let me go back. Allow me to go back to my PowerPoint presentation over here. Don't worry, but there's going to be a Q&A. That's why I keep looking at the time because I want to make sure that we allow time for Q&A. So there. So that's how we answer the question how adaptive learning works in Neo-LMS. So all of those automation rules that I have shared with you, you can explore that later on, or if your classes are already ongoing, explore those rules, explore those features and see how it can help you help your students have a much more personalized and adaptive learning experience. Now, to sum up the presentation, so again, please remember these three keywords: CBT, content, blueprint, and technology. Identify the content, put it in a blueprint, set all of the conditions that you want, that you think will help your students move from one lesson to another or progress from one activity to another, and then use the technology available for you. That could be an LMS, that could be other different digital tools that you think supports an adaptive learning. But for me, Neo-LMS works best for me. So you have the technology to help you do that. So again, it's content, it's blueprint, and it's technology. And just to remind you, this is our role as educator. As educator, we are facilitators of knowledge. We spark ideas for our students. We share knowledge to our students, and we guide our students. So what's the next step? The next step is this. Start designing and personalizing the learning experience of your students. Look at how or see how you can fit all of this to your lesson plans, to your activities. Share whatever it is that's been shared with you to others and what you have learned in this session. Keep learning, keep teaching. And please remember that as educators, we play a very, very critical role in shaping the learner's future. It's our responsibility of making sure that no child is left behind and each child matters. So with that, I end the presentation and I'm opening the floor for Q&A. I hope that this session has been helpful. I know that it's kind of like very short because we only have 1 hour and we have to make time for Q&A. So let me look at some of the questions. We have a Q&A option here in Zoom, so you can type the questions there. Okay, so there's a question here. Do students correct themselves? What kind of global corrections do they receive? But by correction means that they can evaluate themselves. So if you use, for example, Neo-Lms quiz are automatically checked. But you can also probably have a tool where the students can evaluate themselves and put that in Neo-Lms. How many conditions, another question, how many conditions can be added in one situation or lesson for each one of them? I think I've shown that during the demo. So you can set as many conditions as you want. Okay, so the conditions can be varied, can be different conditions. So you can have a condition based on the score. It could be based on how they access the lesson. Okay. Oops, hold on. It's moving so fast. Is it the same for admin and teachers that they can, what's this, that they can edit all or what's, so the admin and the teachers, they have different access to the LMS. So if you're an admin, that means you have access to everything and you can do everything. Where teachers would have access to teacher features. So the teachers can only edit the lessons and activities that is assigned to them or that they have created. The admin, although the LMS administrator can open everything, of course, they would not want to touch the teacher's lessons and teacher's activities. They can view it, but of course, they will not edit it because it's not their class. Although technically they can do that, but of course, they will not do that as an LMS administrator. All right, another question, is there a way to separate male from female students in the gradebook? Let me recall if we have that. Right now, we don't have the feature where we can sort by gender, but we can sort by grade. But let me check. I don't think we have that at the moment. So we can sort by first name, last name, by ID, and by grade. So not by gender yet. Okay. Oh, how do we get a copy of the recording? The recording will be published in YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. It will also be published in the Neo-Lms website and Neo-Lms Facebook page. So you can have access to the recording. Okay, next question. We still have a few more minutes to answer questions. Regarding the grading system, how can we edit it to fit DepEd grading system? Okay, I think you're referring to the transmutation table. The transmutation table of Neo-Lms, you can have up to at least, we support 100 fields there. So the moment that you save and you edit again, there will be an added field. We already have a lot of schools who are following the DepEd transmutation table, and they were able to configure that in the grade book, grading scale of Neo-Lms. The admin can do that, and the teachers can also do that. You can go to the grade map features either inside your class, or the admin can configure that, but it's already supporting at least more than 100 fields for the transmutation table. So we have enough space for the Department of Education. That's the Department of Education here in the Philippines, catering to like 100 fields for transmutation table. Another question, do we need to change quizzes after some time? It really depends. If you want to change quizzes, by changing quizzes, meaning updating the quiz, you can always update your quiz, or you can always change the quiz based on um, based on your on what you want to achieve. Okay. The webinar, yes, the webinar is recorded and you can view this later. Another question, does Neo have third-party plugins to customize UI or grading system? So Neo already has a grading system wherein you can choose different grading scheme or formula that I think works universally worldwide. But if we think that you have other probably third-party plugins that you want to be integrated, you can always send to us that as a suggestion, and we will look at how we can do that. Okay. What specifically do we ask the admin to enable so we can use adaptive learning? All right. So you can request your LMS administrator to go to admin and then app center of Neo, your Neo URL, and just enable adaptive learning. That's the second option in the app center. Probably, let me just quickly show you that. So if we have LMS administrators who are here right now, this is how you do that. So you log in as an admin. Okay. Log in as an admin, and then in the App Center, you go to admin over here, go to the App Center, and then adaptive learning is here. Okay, so let's wait for that to load. And while we're waiting, oh, there, it's the second option. That's right. So that's the second option in the App Center over here. Just click install and it's going to be there. So that will allow you to to see the height assessment, show assessments, lock lessons, show lesson, things like that. Okay. Gradebook automatically puts male learner first. Not necessarily. The gradebook can be in alphabetical order. It could be based on first name or based on last name. It could also be based on the grade. Okay. Okay, what's the difference between category, class, and lesson? Class, this is your subject. Lessons, these are the content that you have. Category, this is the category of the quizzes and the activities that you create. So if you are, so for example, a category could be a quiz, it could be a performance task, it could be a written task. So those are category. Categories are used for activities. Class is actually the subject or the course. It really, I understand that the terminology varies from different countries and different schools. So classes are, these are your subjects. These could, others call it courses. So that's one. And then lessons are the ones that we put in our class. These are the topics, these are the content. Is it advisable to use Neo-Lms in public school? Yes, you can use Neo whether you're in private school, you're in public school. We also have the platform for business organization. We have a free version of Neo that's good for 400 students. We have mobile apps that you can also download. Okay, we can have, you can connect with us if you're interested in knowing more about Neo-Lms. You can always connect with us and we can help you with that. What's the simpler way of adapting lessons for late enrollees? Okay, so if you have late enrollees, it really depends on how you want them to access the lesson. Like for me, the way that I do it, sometimes in my class, all of my lessons are already open. So even if you're late enrollees, you will be able to access the lessons. But if you want late enrollees also to access the lesson in order and so that they see the first lessons first, and then they finish that one before the other one is open or the next one is open, you can use the hide and show feature that we have. So there are many various ways by which you can also manage that. How will we receive our certificate of completion? We will, the next part will be, we will be sending you an instruction on how you can download your certificate for this. Can pupils view the grade of the entire class? No. Learners will only be seeing their own grades. Yes, Neo supports LTI. Okay, I'm interested to implement Neo at my school. How can I get it? You can also go to neolms.com. That's the website, neolms.com, to learn more about Neo. And we also have the contact information there so that you can connect with us, and we can help you further on how you can explore Neo LMS. Is there a special feature of Neo LMS where checking attendance for those students who log in their account? So right now, what we have is an attendance feature wherein as teachers will have to manually check the attendance. For logging in, that could be part of a suggestion that you can send to us. Is Neo LMS free? We have a free version of Neo. Just go to neolms.com and probably create your free plan there. So we have a free version for 400 students. Okay, so I think that is the last question that we have in our Q&A. Okay, I'll stop sharing this. So again, we would like to thank everyone for being here today. Happy World Teachers Day. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar session. And I also would like to thank the Cypher Learning team who made this webinar possible. Our marketing director is here, Miss Alina Tuderasco. Our customer success and engagement director is also here, Miss Arlina Wayan. I think we also have some of our Cypher Learning team are also here. Probably, I'm sure Abe is also here. He's our country director. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, teachers. Keep teaching so that our students can keep learning. Okay, we salute each and every one of you. Happy World Teachers Day to all of us. Take care. Good luck and thank you very much, everyone.